Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts, where we interview diverse change makers and innovators. I'm Deborah Levine, editor-in-chief of the American Diversity Report, and your host today. And with me is Chris Lafayette. He is the founder of the Black Technology Mentorship Program, and he is an emerging technology in medtech, virtual and augmented reality, AI, climate and applied sciences. He is a Silicon Valley national and international speaker, thought leader, culture and inclusion advocate. Wow, welcome, Chris.
Deborah, thank you, and I'm so happy to be here to spend some time with you today.
A pleasure, a pleasure. That's quite a profile you've got there. You want to tell us how that all came to be, a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm happy to. And first and foremost, I just want to express thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some space with you and for all the things that you do on the narrative when we start talking about diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, and just all the sojourn you've been doing for some time in speaking on subjects that are highly sensitive yet so beneficial to listening ears. And so I want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course, of course. As you said, my name is Christopher Lafayette. I'm an international national speaker on emerging technologies, and it wasn't always like that. When I was a kid, I'd come home and I'd walk in the door and up the hall, and there was a man sitting at a desk with a little light on, taking and tearing down apart computers and putting them back together again. And Deborah, I'd go to that man and I'd say, "Dad, what's the internet?" And he'd go about telling me about what the internet was. I came home the next day, I'd walk up the hall, look in the door, and the self-same man sitting at a desk with the light on, tearing apart and putting back the computers again. I go to that man and I say, "Dad, how does the web work?" He'd go about telling me, well, the web worked. And I didn't appreciate it till years, many years down the road, even after his demise, just how influential he was for me when it came to technology specific. And it was rare in those times, and even now in these times, in neighborhoods in which I come from, in particular East Oakland, to have a dad in the house, and even most rare to have even a parent in our Black communities in technology. So when I came to Silicon Valley, I came to Silicon Valley with Black colored skin, living outside of Google, sleeping outside of Facebook, thankfully with the roof over my head, living out of hacker spaces, hotels, or someone else's sofa, with the determination to be able to grow in Silicon Valley and to be able to have crossed the bridge, the tale of two valleys, where so much wealth and opportunity of the world is, right across the bay, if you will. There's such marginalized, impoverished, minimum and very low opportunity in cities like Oakland and Richmond and parts of Berkeley. And so I found myself in Silicon Valley with opportunity. And some time after that, and I had been in technology for some time. And some time after that, people had begun to ask me to speak on the subject of virtual, augmented, mixed reality and things of that nature, culture and inclusion. I found myself speaking across the valley, then the Western region, across the United States, and then globally around the world. And so I've had such an opportunity to be able to look and see what's in the audience and speak with people on stage, speak at universities, lectures, but I've also had an opportunity, Deborah, to see who wasn't in the audience. I've had an opportunity to see who wasn't on stage. The more and more events that I attended and places I visited, less and less, there were people that looked like me. And for some time, I had to think about that and what I do in my business dealings. And someone once asked me on stage, they said, "Chris, how long have you been involved in diversity and inclusion. And I thought for a moment, and I said, well, I was born in it. And so the responsibility comes with, even for those that didn't seek to go and to speak on these things. And as an emerging technologist, which I enjoy in my work being able to talk with and deal with in tech, but I was given the extra responsibility of talking about subjects that I had no idea that I'd be discussing. Yet I found myself leading and helping drive this narrative in the Valley, because if not me, then who? And so there was an opportunity to be able to express such, and I've been doing that thus far.
Wonderful. And I'm sure that having a parent who could help you was just an amazing part of your DNA. I envy you. Now, I will say that my mother made me study computer programming back in 1965. Yeah, I objected. I was going to be a philosopher. Thank you very much. And she informed me computers were the future. This is
Wow.
a suggestion, darling. So I did.
Excellent.
And I became the IT manager of an officer back in the mid 1980s.
Wow.
And I took
Wow.
that computer.
That's awesome.
You know, and there weren't many women who do that.
No.
And so I really appreciate what you're doing to make sure that maybe people who didn't have the parents that we did, right?
There wasn't enough women in the 80s, and there's certainly, candidly, not enough women in the workforce and the technology sphere today. It's just the truth of it, and we can go on and on about that, but I'm listening.
You know, I do all my own technology. Just who I am. It lasts with you, doesn't it? It gets embedded inside you.
It certainly does. It does. And that's remarkable, Deborah, that your mother had the insight to even help guide you. I mean, don't our parents have so much influence to us? And look, decisions that they help make for us that we don't sometimes appreciate until sometimes never, but sometimes much further up the road, and perhaps when we're more wearing their shoes, of empathy, of understanding, and to consider the magnitude of the things that they lend to us on this road. It's really, truly precious. I mean,
it is. It is, and that's why what you're doing is a mentor for people who might not have those parents is so vital, not just for them individually, but for all of us, for the future, our generations to come. It just has to be. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your organization that you founded.
So I founded a platform amongst all my other technology platforms that I founded. I founded one, and I had to make a little bit of elbow room amongst the tasks that myself had committed to, because I just saw the importance of it. In this time of George Floyd, in this time of COVID era, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and other people that look like me that are being persecuted, hunted down. When I see on the streets, although I admit I'm not a protester, but everyone has a part to play and they must be allowed to play them. When I see there on the open streets, not just anger, but fear and hurt from our severely marginalized Black youth and adults, with the lack of opportunity that they have, and simply having the desire for someone to help point them in the right direction, and so we had to go back. Look, technology will never be as great as it can be until everyone has the opportunity to build it. And as far as we've come, and as great as technology has been, and the acceleration therein over the last 10 years, fundamentally, technology will never be as great as it can be until everyone has the opportunity to build it. And even as great as companies such as Apple or Google, ones that are valued at $1 trillion or $2 trillion, I would submit to you that even they know that they have not hit their ceiling. They know that they have a cultural inclusion problem and an obstacle. And even valued at 1 to 2 trillion, someone say, well, Chris, that's fine, but they're valued at 1 to 2 trillion. I would submit to you that Apple, I believe, would be valued at $9 to $10 trillion had they embraced more culture and inclusion into their ecosystem. And we often talk about ecosystems in Silicon Valley as hardware and software. Ecosystems is a set of hardware and software. Ecosystems are people. And the more culture that you add into that homogeneous ecosystem, the stronger that ecosystem becomes. And it doesn't take away from the ecosystem, Deborah. When you add Black people into an ecosystem, or women, or brown, or Latinx, if you will, when you add that to the ecosystem, it doesn't take away from that ecosystem. It levels up the entire ecosystem. And so I launched a platform called the Black Technology Mentorship Program. And I said, I wonder what would happen if I took all these people that I've been working with and that I know in technology and the ones that I don't know. And what if I took these hidden heroes and went back to neighborhoods like where I'm from, East Oakland or Richmond, California, or Brooklyn or Compton, or parts of Atlanta, the south side of Chicago, Queens, and things of that nature. And what if I took these hidden geniuses, and what happens if I pair them together? And so I was able to create a platform called the Black Technology Mentorship Program, a mentor-mentee program first, education reimagined second, and last mile fulfillment third, with that emphasis on that last mile fulfillment of 2 tracks, career path and entrepreneurship, which we call our shipyards and our pipelines path. And in so doing, and making sure that we're not just giving education and teaching with no fruition of opportunity, earned opportunity, but creating a program in which those are able and have the willingness to teach and to learn, which is a bi-directional beneficial program. It's not just mentors serving mentees and helping the disparaged and the hurt and ones that, it's also mentees also teaching and inspiring our mentors, because yes, we can benefit from that ourselves, and putting them together through speaker series, through long-term curriculum development, through soft skill development, hard skill development, to entrepreneur tracks from lab to funding, lab to market initiatives, and getting them and simply doing what those who have come before us, as your mother did in the 60s, and simply helping point us in the right direction. And so that's what we're doing with the Black Technology Mentorship Program. And that is on the education side. But on the other side of that, these companies out here that yet continue to struggle year in and year out and have the obstacles that they have on their own rings, we're working with them and helping train them as well, because they need mentorship as well when it comes to dealing with marginalized communities and their own allyship. And so removing barriers to innovation and becoming a better ally is what I've been doing with these companies, and helping teach them and guide them along with the people that I wonderfully work with, but to teach them and guide them for best practices in dealing with vulnerability, in dealing with open-mindedness, in dealing with reducing self-limiting beliefs and identifying self-limiting beliefs, in dealing with bias, whether implicit or explicit, in dealing with a lot of the things that we see, and in the makeup material of their whole organizational structure, and working with them to be able to understand an updated narrative on prevention when it comes to cultural prevention, when it comes to what are the better steps and how do I become a better identifiable platform and a welcoming platform for people that don't come from where I come from and people that don't necessarily look like me, and to embrace the opportunity. And so We do that, and then lastly, we offer talent for those that are looking to discontinue the practices of seeking their talent and headhunting their talent. Why seek your talent when you can raise your talent?
Interesting.
And so we work with these platforms and develop curriculum from their side so that we can teach our mentees and so that we can get into best practices of raising talent for delivery and earn opportunity, and that making sure that they get the absolute best talent available for their ranks and product delivery teams and remote systems. And that comes with a good story. And it comes with the story of not just writing us a check. That's the intention, just to write us a check and not work together. Then that just serves the benefit of a rock in a garden that doesn't grow. But the idea is for us to be able, and I'll take the check. I'll take the check, but I'll also take the relationship that comes in tow. And if we have those things together, then on that type of foundation and on that type of ground, are we actually seeing positive and actionable change and success in dealing with systemic racism?
So tell me, give me an example of one of the self-limiting beliefs that you run into in the corporate world that you're able to tweak into something more productive.
Sure. When we deal with identifying self-limiting beliefs, we've had situations where there are those that have entered in a state of vulnerability. But just because we can say that I'm vulnerable, or I have a willingness, it doesn't mean you necessarily know the next steps that you need to take with the disposition of vulnerability. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're now fortified and equipped with actionable information to help guide you towards the next steps on your comportment and how you're looking, whether you're on leadership, work level, ERG. Well, when you're dealing with on that level, you have to be equipped with the right type of information for better and greater identifiability internally, for better communication structures.
Okay.
And when those new solutions are presented and they're taught, now here comes the wall. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can do this. I'm a DevOps engineer. I'm management. I'm an executive vice president. I'm a president. And I've been doing these things for so long. And then, Deborah, I tell you, that's when the true vulnerability comes out, believe it or not.
Really?
Because vulnerability isn't just saying, I'm vulnerable. Okay, I'm vulnerable. Because the first thing that we talk about is that you have to have an open mind. And when you begin giving new gear and new equipment of information to the mentee, to the worker, to the leadership, and you give that to them, then you may start getting, I don't know if I can do that. And it's something that they embrace and something they want. They don't know how to re-regiment themselves and to go towards new steps, and they want it so badly. And then that's where the disposition of being vulnerable comes in, because vulnerable isn't necessarily a play for manifesting without. It's a play for understanding within.
Yes, I agree, totally.
So it's taking internal inventory the best that you can to realize in this state of vulnerability what you're actually vulnerable to. And a lot of what we come to find out, a big part of what we're vulnerable to is our self-limiting beliefs. For those that have the willingness and the heart to change, but they just cannot continue to do such. And so that's where we start putting in the hard work to go about in dealing with that and removing those barriers to innovation. This just isn't a simple fix. This isn't a simple situation, but we have the patience to work with it. Does that help some?
Yes, it does. It does. And imagine a lot of patience to work with it. It is a difficult situation to change at such a deep level. People, how they work, how they feel, how they believe. I know very well, and admire you for taking on Silicon Valley, which is sort of famous for its lack of diversity and inclusion and its need for it. Oh yes, the need for it. So
It's a tale, and it's a thing that I've been seeing all too long in Silicon Valley. At this point, I've advised platforms. I've been invited to speak, whether it's the UK British government, Salesforce, or other platforms, and I can say a whole lot. And I'll tell you this, that it's not enough for a one-off session.
no, not at all.
I mean to chop wood. We mean to go on a pioneer journey. And if you're willing to go the distance, there's a lot of benefit and good that myself and our team with BTMP has helped affect to actually making effective change.
Good for you.
Real substantive change on the company and the corporate level. And to my surprise, we've had so many platforms that have helped reach out, and that's helped fund the Black Technology Mentorship Program. Is that we've had platforms that have said, "Hey, Chris, we really want you to come speak on removing barriers to innovation and becoming a better ally," and working with them and continuing to work with them, and really wanting to be part of mentorship. So when we think that we're ready to be mentors, and yes, you can be a mentor, but at the same time, it does benefit for you to know that you are a mentee yet.
Yes, it does. I've always learned as much from the people I've taught, coached, mentored as they've learned from me. It's been an amazing journey, and I hope people will hear you and work with you, because the enrichment of that engagement cannot be really defined in words.
It's enriching, and especially in a time where we see such a juxtaposition and a dichotomy what's happening in this particular country, where people that look like me can't even march on the streets and to be able to peacefully protest without being ridiculed from the same audience of when they've had to look into their own eyes and their own disposition and behaviors on what they do, and to be able to call it two totally different things. Not attempting to go too political with this, but I tell you, we find ourselves in a situation, Deborah, where we have to ask ourselves, is it by our actions that you hate people that look like me? That you have such a disdain for people that look like me? Or is it simply by who I am? Is that why you hate me? And why you treat me so and ostracize me from the narrative? And as we continue to grow together in this country, it is pertinent for us to be able to find some type of way,
Yes.
some type of way to work together, especially amongst all the hate and the vitriol. So I just go guided with grace and mercy in my life. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have the opportunities that I've been given. And with this program, we actually are creating effectual change. We're not just blacking out our social media sites in solidarity. We're not just talking about, I'm not just talking about what the things that we can do. Given how precious time is,
Yes.
less talking, more doing, building strong and building together. And that's a big part of what we've been doing, because look, how are you going to change or treat or educate or teach the lack of diversity and cultural awareness? By only talking.
By only talking. Yes, I think you're right. And if there's one good thing that comes out of these difficult times, it's people like you who are stepping up, who are making all kinds of connections to bring the discussion to the front of people's minds and take it from discussion to action. And that's what we need. And I thank you so much for all that you're doing and for sharing that work with us today. Is there anything else you'd like to say that we haven't covered?
Sure, there is. And we now find ourselves in this new era, in this new COVID era. And our Black and brown communities were already severely marginalized in pre-COVID.
Yes, they were.
And now we find ourselves in a situation where we've never been more marginalized ever. And with the expectancy to be able to remote learn in education, and with the topsy-turvy educational setting and scene, I'm imploring to everyone who has the willingness and the desire to serve to open your hearts, not your checkbook, but to open your hearts to wanting to help affect actual change and not just talking. But I built a program where it's not just a group of Black people at Black Technology Mentorship Program that will take your money and only do something with it and not allow others to be able to come in and to help till the ground. I want all available hands from all demographics and all different backgrounds, women and male and all genders, no matter the color, no matter the gender, to come through service leadership and to help till the ground with us. We have wonderful leadership. We have a great team who I'm so thankful to be able to work with. Majority female led in our leadership, and it's strong. And we find ways to continue to work together because, Deborah, the time for talking is done. The time for talking is done. And as you know, with all the ground that you've tilled, I extend myself to help you in whatever it is that you're doing that I may be acceptable yet to be able to do. And that's within my wheelhouse and capacity to be able to do. And in turn, I hope that I'm able to build with you beyond this podcast together, that we can find common ground to till, roll up our sleeves, and at the end of that day, to say that the time was well worth it. So thank you.
A pleasure. I think you and I have a few things to discuss after this podcast interview. I do indeed. I have already got some things written down, notes. I hope you're ready. And I thank you for sharing, for inspiring, motivating, and I believe that there's going to be more to come. So audience, thank you so much for joining us today. Stay tuned. I think you'll be surprised happily. And we'll see you at the next podcast. And thank you, Chris. And have a wonderful day, everybody, doing something for someone else.